So good morning. My name is Mary Wiley, and I'm with Niagara Connects, and we're really glad to be hosting this webinar today in partnership with the Age-Friendly Niagara Council. And as you know, we're going to be learning about the results of the 2022 survey of Niagara's older adults 50 plus that the Age-Friendly Niagara Council conducted. So if we could go to the next slide, Pat is going to be advancing our slides for us. So we'll be doing a land acknowledgement. We'll be learning about the survey, and presenters today include Dominic Ventresca, who's the chair of the interim board of the Age-Friendly Niagara Council, Pat Spadafora from Kaleidoscope Consulting, who's an aging consultant with lots of expertise, and she helped us to shepherd along that survey in 2022. And Polly Gardner, who is an associate professor in the Health Sciences Department at Brock University, will be speaking as well. And also present on the webinar today are members of her team. So Mia Narashima is also a professor at Brock, and Majuria Ganendran and Jacqueline Ryder are both grad students in health sciences at Brock, and they work together on some research that is relevant to our topic today. And Polly will be talking a bit about that. We will have time for questions and answers toward the end, and wrap up and next steps will include afterwards, you'll receive, watch your email inbox, you'll receive 2 emails. One will come to you very shortly, a webinar evaluation survey, 3 questions. Will take you a minute to fill out. Please fill it out because it helps us to strengthen our work. And then there will also be an email with the webinar recording and resources that we're referring to. So again, just keep an eye out for that email showing up in the upcoming days. So on to the next slide. Just a word about our land acknowledgement. So this is the land acknowledgement that both the Age-Friendly Niagara Council and Niagara Connects utilize to show our to recognize and express our gratitude for the land upon which we live and work here in Niagara, and to honor the Indigenous peoples who have inhabited these lands for many, many, many years. And we just would ask everyone to reflect from your own perspective upon how to make this recognition meaningful. And in Niagara, we have Indigenous organizations, which include 2 Native Friendship Centers, one in Niagara-on-the-Lake on Airport Road, one in Fort Erie. And we also have the Niagara chapter of Native Women. And for anyone wanting to learn a bit more in the Niagara context, Majuria is just posting some links to some resources that are on the Niagara Knowledge Exchange that are, I think will help you to make a little more sense of this topic in the Niagara context. All right, so let's go to the next slide. And over to you, Pat.
Yeah, actually, Dominic's going to do this one.
Dominic first. Sorry, Dominic.
That's okay. This is Dominic Ventresca, and as Mary mentioned, I chair the board for the Age-Friendly Niagara Council. She mentioned Pat as an aging consultant. I'm an aging board member. I guess that's what we all do, right? But anyway, that's partially why I'm qualified to be that board chair. So the Age-Friendly Niagara Council is volunteer-led, and it's community-driven. And it's been in existence in different iterations for over 12 years now. And I just want to focus on the community-driven part, in that we take our lead from the community. And this recent survey is another example of where we go to the community to determine what the priorities are for older adults, and what we can do to foster local action amongst the area, or at least among the local area municipalities and the citizens everywhere across Niagara, based on the World Health Organization's age-friendly community domains. We now are a council on aging and part of a network of provincial councils on aging, of which there are around a dozen or so. So Niagara is the latest among those councils on aging to form. We also, in 2022, a big project funded by the New Horizons program from the federal government, We did a community survey and consultations, and that's where Pat Spadafora came in and did an outstanding job of going across Niagara's communities and finding out what older adults felt about various topics. And now that we have that information, we're proceeding to inform decision makers, like many of you that are on this webinar today, and also the community at large, on what older people said about being in Niagara and what are some of the concerns. And also the information from that survey will enable the council to develop a revised strategic action plan to guide us in our future plans and deliberations and actions. So Pat, if we could just move to the next slide, please. So before we begin the context, or before we begin the webinar, I'd just like to provide a little framework of understanding so that we're kind of on the same base level here. We believe strongly at the council that older adults are a very heterogeneous group of individuals, and there's varied needs and strengths. And I want to emphasize that there are needs, and there are also strengths and opportunities that older adults provide. And on the heterogeneous concept there, it's often easy to generalize about a particular demographic, perhaps based on longstanding societal attitudes, and oftentimes these lead to stereotypes and also many negative notions, ageist notions, actually, where we treat people a certain way just because of their age. So it's one of those isms that we need to be aware of. So we want to emphasize that there's a big variety of older adults, and not to kind of fall into the trap of overgeneralizing and stereotyping. And the survey results reflect that there are these variations of individual viewpoints. For example, there were varied opinions on how people access information, what media sources they use, what are some of the priorities. The one that aged the most, as Pat will say later, is aging in place, but there are other priorities too. And then their interests, and one of the most, I think, outstanding interests, and this reflects the strengths, the opportunities that older adults provide in our community, their potential for volunteering. And there's a lot of untapped volunteers out there amongst a growing number of older people, and also unprecedented in terms of the ability and the longevity of older adults today. And every statistic, we must remember, reflects individuals' personal journey and a personal story, a life lived experience, which when combined, and that's what we're doing here, collectively serves to help us in understanding what the older adults across Niagara believe in certain areas, and also help decision makers in their role of strengthening Niagara as an age-friendly community and a community for all ages. And I have that bolded because that is the vision of the council, which also was formed by a community consultation session where that was devised. Okay, next slide, Pat. And then I turn it over to Pat.
Is that over to me? Can everyone hear me okay? Thank you, Dominic and Mary. I really can't tell you how excited I am to be here. And before some of you came on the webinar this morning, I said that I was up in the night wishing I had you like for hours so that we could really talk about not just the results, but how to implement them, because that's really where the sweet spot is how do we take this information and how do we really help you as you're making decisions in your community and in your organizations. So as Mary and Dominic have alluded to, the purpose of today is really to provide you just with some of the results from the survey that can, we hope, add value to you for decision makers, for all of you, service planners, for older adults who are living the experience in Niagara, for so many of you. So I said there, let us help you to serve others. I have added this quote at the beginning, the Margaret Mead quote, because those of you on the call today who know me, and many of you do, I've seen you coming in today. I have used this quote many times in reference to Niagara, because I work in other communities as well, although I'm an honorary Niagara person, right, Dominic? but I do work in other communities. And I have to tell you, I have never worked with a group of thoughtful, committed citizens to the extent that I have in Niagara. And it is because of you on this call today that this survey was able to happen. One other just comment is, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm wearing my little kaleidoscope today. And my kaleidoscope reminds me, and I hope maybe it might remind you too, to look at things a little bit differently, to take a different lens when you're looking this morning, for example, at some of the survey results, and think about opportunities. What can you take from these little nuggets this morning that may help you in your own communities? So when I'm doing workshops in person, I often bring kaleidoscopes for every table and suggest that if you get a little bit stuck in your thinking, just turn the dial slightly and you'll see a whole new world. So thank you, Niagara, for everything that you do. Dominic and Mary both referenced the survey that we conducted. I think well, it says right on there, the survey was completed by July 15th. So we had it up for quite a while there. But in addition to the survey, one very important thing happened after that, and that was on October 28th at the Centre de Santé Communautaire in Welland, where we held a community forum. And so what you're going to see this morning is that we've integrated some of the feedback from the community forum into the slides to show you where there are synergies. Participants who were at the community forum looked at many of the same things that we talked about in the survey. So it's come together as a lovely report. The survey was successful because of you. It was available online for people who wanted to complete it that way. It was also available as print copies. We facilitated a Francophone focus group in Welland. What else did we do? There were many events, an event in Fort Erie, many events in St. Catharines. And so really, you know, we could take up all of our time, quite honestly, if I were to name everyone that I see coming in today who was instrumental in ensuring that all older adults in Niagara had the opportunity to complete this survey. And so kudos to you. You know, you just did an absolutely fantastic job. I'd like to think about this morning as kind of a taste menu, because when Mary sends out the recording, she's also going to send you a PDF of the slides that I'm using this morning. And so I won't speak to every single thing on a slide. I'll point out some highlights for you and then leave it to you to kind of think about what makes sense in your communities. So that's why I won't cover every single thing that we're talking about. Just to get us started before we look at specific results, I'm only going to point out a couple of things here. One is that we did have responses from all 12 municipalities. So I think you can pat yourself on the back for sure for that. We had over 1,200 completed surveys, and that included 34 that were completed in French. So the planning committee was very committed, very dedicated to ensuring that we were inclusive in offering this opportunity to many, many people. And the only other one I'll point out from on this slide, because we'll look at some others in a couple of minutes, was that about 3/4 of the surveys were completed by women. And I've just completed another survey on a provincial basis with an organization, and that is really consistent. In the provincial one that we just did, 77% were completed by women. So one little opportunity there is finding ways to get men more involved in completing surveys. This gives you an overview of where survey respondents live in Niagara. Now, you might look at this at first glance and think, wow, you know, there's a lot more people in St. Catharines, but Dominic did a great analysis. And if you were to look at these numbers more carefully, we'd see that they're really proportionate with the number of older adults living in these municipalities. So with St. Catharines being a larger municipality, you would expect that there would be you know, a substantial number of respondents from that municipality. But there's always room to engage more people. And when I look at Niagara, even though I'm an honorary Niagara citizen. I don't live there. So when I look at it from where I live, which is Ancaster, all I see is opportunity. You are sitting on so many wonderful opportunities in Niagara. So let's begin exploring them. In terms of age groups and results with the survey, you might look at this and think, wow, look, 60 to 69-year-old age group was definitely the largest in terms of responses, followed by 70 to 79. But I have to tell you, what excites me are the 4 people over 90 that responded, because Dominic talked about older adults representing heterogeneity, and you cannot compare a 50-year-old with somebody who's 100, for example. And in Canada, the 80+ group is the fastest growing group. So although the bulk is what you might expect, 60 to 79, I think it's absolutely wonderful that we're continuing to engage people over the age of 90. Next time, Dominic and Mary, I want to see the 100+ in there as well. This is one slide that I thought might be very important to those of you, all of you, but particularly those of you making decisions about when to offer programs and services, and that's labor market participation. The world has changed. The world of work has changed, and I think it's important to recognize that. So not everybody answers every question, but of those who responded to this question, I just want to point out that 10.5% said they are working full-time. So they may need some services, assuming they're working Monday to Friday, which isn't necessarily accurate, but we need to maybe provide more services on weekends or evenings, for example. 8.3% said they were working part-time, and 4.7% said they have their own business. The bulk of entrepreneurs and senior entrepreneurs fall into that 60 to 64-year-old age group. So I think those are important things for us to consider as we move forward. Volunteering, Dominic mentioned the importance of volunteering. And when I look at this slide, again, I'm looking at opportunities. 2 jump out at me on this page. One are the individuals who said they were interested in becoming a volunteer. Let's find out who they are. And there's a large group who said they do not currently volunteer. So again, it's like peeling away the layers on an onion. Let's dig down and see what it would take to transition or convert someone who's not currently volunteering to doing some volunteer work. And you're going to hear more about that from the work that was done at Brock through Polly. Here's where I've added a little bit of information from the community forum that was held in October. So some of their suggestions in recruiting volunteers included that preference for episodic volunteering. Not everybody can make a regular commitment. They might want to volunteer for a specific event. Retiring adults, including those who have moved to the region in retirement, because who wouldn't want to live in Niagara, right? And they may be untapped resources in your communities. Family volunteering. Now, that was an interesting concept. And again, you'll see the complete list from the community forum, thanks to Majoria in the report. There were several suggestions about where to post recruitment flyers. In a sense, really, the take home for that one for me is go to where people are. You know, they're going to their pharmacies, they're going to the grocery store, they're going to libraries. I know we have some librarians on the call today. And then piggyback on some existing activities. And having opportunities that matter to people, ask them. And now I'm going to turn this over to you, Polly.
Perfect. How exciting and what a great thing. I think this dovetails really nicely with the survey. So thanks for the opportunity, everybody. So I'll get right to it because we don't have a lot of time, but the goal of our research study, which was a joint partnership with Age-Friendly Niagara and Brock University, the goal was to identify effective strategies for sustaining current volunteers while motivating others to join the Age-Friendly Niagara movement. So we worked with an older adult advisory team and focused our research in 4 areas: key activities and the procedures and operations of these age-friendly committees, what motivates people to join and what are the benefits to volunteering, what are some of the challenges and barriers to doing so, and then some suggestions for how to effectively maintain and sustain a group of volunteers. Next slide, please. So we learned so much, in-depth interviews and 9 focus groups with over 64 older adult volunteers across the Niagara region. But as I only have a few minutes here, and I'm thinking particularly about our audience and our decision makers and government officials here today, I'm going to cut to the chase and get to 3 lessons learned. So our participants shared their experiences as volunteers, and they taught us and showed us through their stories a few really important things. First of all, volunteering is really a win-win opportunity. It significantly and positively benefits individuals and communities. Individual benefits include improved overall health and life satisfaction, a real sense of belonging and purpose, opportunity to use skills and talents that have been accumulated over a lifetime, and also a deep sense of responsibility and desire to give back and make a difference in their communities. The communities, of course, benefit greatly also. It improves the age friendliness of a community, which we know is of benefit to all of us, regardless of age. People start to feel good about their communities, and it encourages others to want to contribute. And it builds a deep sense of connection and trust among residents. Secondly, the work of these volunteers creates some really significant changes in these communities. Pat, could you move to the next slide? And I'll just give you some examples. These are just a few examples of real change. A hospice built in the city of Welland, which took 10 years and really demonstrates the persistence and dedication of the volunteers who supported this. Affordable housing for older adults and those with lower incomes in the city of Thorold. The Seniors Advisory Committee in the city of Niagara Falls conducted a pilot project in which public transportation was provided at a reduced fee for seniors. And a new committee in the town of West Lincoln held their first one-day seniors forum in their community, and it included an information session, lunch, and various fun activities. These are cool, right? And these are just a few of the kind of work that they've been able to do. Back to the previous slide, please, Pat. So here it leads to number 3. Finally, we learned for all this to happen and to ensure that we have a strong and sustainable cadre of volunteers working to improve municipalities across the Niagara region. It's absolutely critical to have stable support from these municipalities. Specifically, we're talking about budgetary support, and it doesn't have to be a lot, but it needs to be a stable line on all municipal budgets, not something that's negotiated every year. Stable budgetary support. Secondly, staff support. Somebody designated to sit on the age-friendly municipal committees in all of these, in all of the municipalities. And third, this kind of general overall political listening to was really a significant story. People who are volunteering want to know that that amount of work that they're doing and their dedication is being listened to, and knowing that there's action taken at the municipal and government level. When decision makers show up, it makes a real difference to the amount of work, the sense of value that our volunteers told us about, and to them really feeling good about the kind of work that they're doing. The message was made loud and clear and repeated often, and I just want to challenge all of us here today to consider how we can support the hard work of age-friendly volunteer committees, because we know that we all benefit from the work that they do. Thanks.
Thanks, Polly. Had to make sure that I unmuted myself again. Thank you very much. I think the work that you and Mia and Jacqueline and Majoria did at Brock very much complements and supports the results around volunteering and other factors that came out of the survey. We're going to keep sharing some of our tasting menu with you. I think we're past the appetizers, And perhaps we're now into the first course, the Primo course. So one of the objectives of the grant and project that Dominic mentioned at the very beginning today was to increase community awareness about older adult InfoLink. And so we discussed this at the community forum, and it was a question on the survey. And I believe in the full report, we included a copy of the survey as well. So you'll be able to see what we asked older adults living in Niagara. So you'll see a variety of suggestions that came out of the community forum about increasing awareness about older adult InfoLink. And again, you'll see a complete list of those when you have access to the report. Before I talk about this particular slide, I'm thinking back to Dominic's opening remarks about every statistic reveals an individual's personal journey and story. And I love that, Dominic, because there are statistics, but stories trump data every time, right? And so I'd like to just share with you just 3 little stories about hypothetical women in their mid-70s, all of whom live alone in identical economic circumstances with the same array of elements: diabetes, arthritis, and high blood pressure. And this was shared with me by Coletta McGrath, who's on the call today, and it's from a CNN article that was titled "Socially Frail Older Adults," that appeared on March the 21st of this year. And I'm going to share these 3 women's stories, little vignettes about them, just so that as we talk about community participation and belonging and other topics, we have an idea of some of the people that this represents. And all of you in your own visioning can probably imagine older adults as well. But let me quickly share these with you. Mrs. Green stays home most of the time. Ms. Green, sorry, stays home most of the time and sometimes goes a week without seeing people. But she's in frequent touch by phone with friends and relatives, and she takes a virtual class with a discussion group from a nearby college. Second woman, Ms. Smith also stays home, but she rarely talks to anyone. She's lost contact with her friends, she has stopped going to church, and spends most of her time watching television. Our third woman, Ms. Johnson, has a wide circle of friends and a busy schedule. She walks with neighbors regularly. She volunteers at a school, local school, twice a week. She goes to church, and she is in close touch with her children who don't live nearby. I love those stories to introduce the rest of our slides, because I would encourage us to think about what we might do. How might we better plan programs or services? How could we intervene? How do we help Mrs. Smith, who is not really involved in her community at all? How do we help her to re-engage? And I say this within the context of also recognizing that older adults want choice and opportunity, and their choice may be that they want to stay at home. So we're not saying that there's anything, we're not going to force someone out if in fact they're choosing to be at home, but let's make sure they have options and are aware of them. So when we asked participants to the survey, how would you describe your sense of belonging and being engaged in your community? You'll see in Niagara, 38.12% said somewhat strong, and 17% said very strong. Now you could look at these figures and say, but what about the 33% that said somewhat weak, or 12 who said very weak? Yes, for sure, we want to know where that weakness comes from. But my approach would be more building on strengths, and let's find out what it is that helps the very strong and somewhat strong to feel engaged, and let's build on those strengths. And in doing so, that will help to bring along people who said they felt very weak or somewhat weak in terms of that attachment. Maybe we can get Ms. Smith involved and being more engaged in her community again. We asked survey participants, do you currently participate in social, recreational, and cultural activities in your community? And you'll see there's over 50% in Niagara said yes, they do currently participate. Despite that, there are some barriers to participation that the survey respondents identified. You'll see the top one, the most significant one, was the lack of information about available activities and programs. Well, the reality is you can't access what you don't know about. Okay? So that's one we need to pay attention to. The second highest one was costs or fees, if they were applicable. And then no one to go with was the third one. But again, let me point out pretty high up there, the fourth one was I prefer to do things at home. So Mrs. Smith, who doesn't go out, stays at home, has very little contact with anyone, she may be choosing to prefer to do things at home, and that's okay too. So you'll see all of the other options that we gave people as well. Motivation for participating in social and recreational activities. The two most significant ones were having a friend participate with me. I think that's a really important one. We like to feel connected. We like somebody to go with us very often. We might be more likely to go to something if we have a buddy to go with. And then activities closer to where I live was the second one. These were some suggestions from the community forum in October, actions that they felt would help people to feel a greater sense of belonging. One was getting to know your neighbors, building those relationships, creating opportunities to develop these relationships. That's not always easy, is it? As I said, I live in Ancaster. Ancaster is, really quite a bedroom community. And for many of those years, I, like others, commuted to Oakville for 25 years. And so for a long time, I really didn't even know my neighbors. I saw them coming and going, but that's an important one. People like to get to know their neighbors. And so that's one suggested action that came out of the forum. One question that people brought up at the forum was wondering whether employers have a role to help to prepare their staff for retirement to really ease that transition. We'll often see that people who are ready to move into a retirement I don't know if I like the word retirement anymore, but anyway, into that retirement phase, most of the people I know that are retired seem to be busier and working more than ever. But we often focus on that financial preparation and not so much the social preparation. Find out more about why people don't feel connected. Hosting multi-generational events. One of the things that I really respect and admire very much about the plans that the Age-Friendly Niagara Council has is to have even the Age-Friendly board reflect different generations, because all generations have something to contribute to the solutions. We can't really, I think, ignore technology. It's so pervasive in our society, and you can leverage this as decision makers or planners or service providers. So the 5 top uses of technology that were identified by this particular research survey sample, were banking, social media, Facebook. I know there's a number of groups in Niagara who have Facebook groups. I know there's one in the Ridgeway area that participated in the survey. Purchasing groceries and or other kinds of retail products, connecting with friends and family. I would hazard a guess that many people in today's webinar are zoomed out, have been really, particularly because of the pandemic. I think a lot of us really appreciated that opportunity to connect with friends and family on platforms such as Zoom, and for reading books and newspapers. We asked the kind of devices that older adults use at least once a week. And certainly mobile phones was the greatest one reported there, followed by computers. And then a lot of people still have landlines, home phones, and tablets. So people are using technology. And when Dominic in his comments talked about stereotypes and myths about older adults, it's really a myth that older adults don't use technology. And in fact, they are the fastest growing group of internet users. So you can leverage that, not denying that people still want print media and other forms of communication as well. So when we asked about preferred ways to receive information about programs, services, and activities, you'll see there's a kind of a long list there that we gave people of ways that they might access information. And by far, the one that was most frequently cited was email. A lot of people have email, internet websites, social media. Again, Facebook seemed to be preferred by some people. And one that actually I should have also put in that rusty color there because it ranked up high as well, was word of mouth. And that, I think, again, is, I found that consistently with other surveys as well, where word of mouth is really an important way that people hear about opportunities. I included this slide in part because I know there are a number of people representing the healthcare sector in the call today, and welcome. But I'm sharing it with you with a bit of a caveat because we asked respondents about the top 3 ways healthcare was accessed in the last 3 months. So think back to the slide where I showed you the survey, and recognizing that ended in July, mid-July, we were asking them about the top 3 ways that they'd accessed healthcare previously. So that would have been, about February on. And, as things have opened up, I would expect that if we were to ask this same question today, we might find that attending medical appointments in person, which was the greatest one, for example, might have increased as things have opened up a little bit. But when we asked the question, the top 3 were medical appointments in person, phone calls, and email communication. We also asked respondents about the 5 topics of most importance to them. And I think this is an important one for you to look at. And we gave them about 20 options, but these were the top 5. Increased housing options, health and wellness promotion, increased recreation, leisure, and learning opportunities for older adults, supports to age in my own home, and increased education and information about programs and services available to adults 50 plus. Remember, we said that top one was people were saying they didn't know about a lot of things that were available to them, but clearly they want to know about them. One of the things that I found most exciting in the surveys, we asked a very open-ended question that was this: what does a community for all ages look like to you? And I've got just some sample responses of themes that emerged from both the survey and the October 28th Community Forum. So one theme that emerged was opportunities to stay active. And you'll see that there's great congruency between what was said at the Community Forum and comments that were made by survey respondents. Walkable neighborhoods, bike paths, outdoor spaces you'll see in the Community Forum. You'll see also walking and cycling paths from survey responses. But the opportunities went beyond just space. They included things like flexible time for programs. Remember the slide about labor market participation? Some people are still working, or they may be doing other things that prevent them from being involved during the day, for example. It could be a grandparent taking care of grandchildren during the day, and they also want flexible time for programs. So there's lots of variables at play, but definitely Niagara wants to stay active. Inclusive communities. This is such a key one. And again, there was, if you were to look at all of the comments, there was again synergies between survey responses and the forum. Niagara, kudos to you. You want people to feel welcome and respected in your community. You want them to feel included regardless of age, ability, social status, sexual orientation, or gender. At the Community Forum, we talked about engaging libraries more to keep people connected. And I know that when I looked at that, who was coming in today in the guest list, I know that libraries are represented here today, and you have a fantastic opportunity there with your open doors to help people feel socially connected, as well as engaging them in other ways. Access. I should point out to you that although the feedback about what an age-friendly community is, was they were grouped into themes. You know, they're not discrete. They're a way of organizing information, but they, you know, access to housing, for example, access to inclusive communities, they definitely work in concert with one another. But people wanted access to reliable information, health service and healthcare practitioners, affordable technology and internet plans. If the Niagara region is like the region where I live in the Hamilton area, if you're along sort of the 403 in Hamilton, you've got pretty good broad bandwidth, but if you're in a rural part of the Hamilton area, it's kind of spotty. And so it's not consistent across my region, and I'm guessing it's probably not consistent across your region as well. How about this one? Traveling senior centers for rural communities. When I think of that, I think of the Popemobile, and I think of getting a bus out there, and we'll take the services to you. Access to transportation. I always just kind of smile when I look at this because I've been involved in this field for a very long time, and I feel like we've been talking about transportation for all of those years. And yet it continues to be a barrier for many people in terms of accessing services and programs. Connected generations. I mentioned multi-generational earlier. Again, from both the survey responses and the community forum, there was interest in connecting generations. And one that I'm drawn to personally is the mentorship idea. And I'm particularly drawn to two-way reciprocal mentorship, whereby older people and younger people both teach and learn from one another. Housing options and supports. Most people want to age in community. I've started using that term much more than aging in place, because aging in community is broader and it includes all of the other supports that are required to help people age in their own homes. So people wanted increased housing supports, age-friendly housing, mixed housing. One comment from the community forum was to bring community services to community residences where there's a desire to stay at home. Multi-generational came up again. It seems to be a recurring theme. Multi-generational housing options, and then student and older adult co-housing examples. There's many examples of that already taking place, including at McMaster in Hamilton with McMaster students and older adults living in the community here. So again, you know, from other work I've done in the past, research, we found that what older adults want is choice and opportunity. And back to you, Dominic. I think we're doing pretty well on the time, and we'll have some time for questions.
Yes, thank you, Pat. That was, you know, an excellent presentation, and my appetite's not fully satiated yet. So you've done a great job of whetting my appetite, and I hope those are the participants too, so that they can follow up, as I'll say in a few moments, on how to get the full meal. So I just want to point out what the next steps are now for the Age-Friendly Niagara Council. We will continue fostering awareness and local action as we've done over the past 12 years or so, but now we have up-to-date information from the survey and from the consultation sessions that will lead us to this revised Niagara Action Plan, so we're more in tune with what the community's saying to us are priorities. We want to generate a business plan, and we were funded by the Niagara Community Foundation to do so. And we hope to develop that business plan so that our board can be guided towards a sustainable future, and also so that we can basically work through a community process to establish a founding board. And I want to focus here on the founding board. I mentioned we are now Council on Aging, and we want to get to that level of sophistication like the other councils on aging across Ontario, where there's a community appointed board. There's, you know, with all the trappings that go with such a formal organization, with bylaws and perhaps a charitable status and so on, so that we can even do more in the future with this type of organization to helping Niagara continue to be an age-friendly community. And of course, we also want to disseminate this I think, treasure trove of information that's available now through the survey and Pat's report to help community partners understand what older adults in Niagara prioritize, what they say is important to them, and then helping those community partners with their mandates, helping them do their job better by having a good understanding of a significant group in Niagara that are 50 plus, so that they can better, be a better community agency, be a better business, whatever. And then we also want to plan a follow-up learning session in the fall that includes the compelling human stories that are behind all these statistics. Pat gave us a bit of a glimpse using the three women the hypothetical cases there, but we want to get into some real cases and share them with you and help provide some extra depth of understanding of some of the issues that older adults in Niagara will face. And also we want to touch on some of the groups that are perhaps most in need of our attention. Pat mentioned about some older women, and they certainly have some special challenges. We want to look at certain impoverished older adults, those who are marginalized, those who are racialized, so that we have, again, a good action plan to address the needs of older adults across the spectrum. Okay, next slide, Pat. So for those of you that are decision makers, or for those of you who are members of the community who want to just basically understand better what older adults in Niagara are thinking these days, there is the Empowerment of Older Adults survey, the full report. And as has been mentioned, that will be available. A link will be provided to you in the follow-up email that you'll probably get next week, along with the recording from today and other resources. The report that Polly reported on earlier, that was produced by Brock University in concert with our council. That is the link there, but you will get, when you get the slides, you'll also get information on how to access that full report. This link is on the Niagara Knowledge Exchange. There's also a link to it on the Age-Friendly Niagara website, which I referenced last there. And then I also want to point out that although Pat today presented on the data as it pertains across Niagara, there are 12 microcosms that led to those survey results. And so by each municipality, we've got data that's available. And we wish to share that with the advisory committees of the municipalities, but they'll be available to others as well. So we will give you some information on how that access, how you can access that, keeping in mind that sometimes the data is quite limited because the number of participants, particularly in the smaller municipalities, we're small in number, but it gives you some insights into what those local citizens had to say. Okay, and then final slide for me then, Pat. Next one. So just to have some closing thoughts before we get into the questions and answers from our participants today. Niagara's made significant strides towards becoming an age-friendly community, a community for all ages, which is going back to the vision that the community gave us some 12 years ago. For example, municipalities have established their age-friendly advisory committees, and there's been growth in that regard. Doug Rappelje and I made a number of presentations to municipal councils to suggest those that didn't have advisory committees that they established them. So from a handful of committees 12 years ago to now pretty well every local area municipality having one has been significant progress. When we brought some of those advisory committee members together several years ago, they committed to wanting to meet with their colleagues in the other municipalities so that they could learn from each other and share best practices, etc. So that led to the formation of the Niagara Older Adult Alliance, or NOAA, that is known by its acronym. And so that's a good sign. In fact, when the Brock researchers presented at a global conference on aging, the representative from the World Health Organization pointed out that's really cool what Niagara's got going in terms of this Age-Friendly Council, and also the alliance formed by the municipal advisory committee members. So the survey gave us some additional thoughts on visions for what a community for all ages looks like. So that's been, some of them have been shared today by Pat, but and it's great to see that things like inclusivity and connected generations kept coming up, because those are values that the council has established when we did some of our value setting exercises two summers ago. And I want to leave with this inspirational postscript that until we meet again in the fall for our learning session with lived experiences that will punctuate a lot of the data that we've learned today, this particular reference here is to a song produced by some 50 young Canadian musicians and artists. It's to a Serena Ryder tune, and it's in support of troubled youth, but it aligns with the council's values related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it also aligns with our council's understanding of what's important to Niagara communities, such as the intergenerational relationships, positive and supportive intergenerational relationships, and also to the notion of intersectionality. So we'll leave it to you to get to watch that. We don't have time today to have you to watch it, but nevertheless, you'll get a link to that, and hopefully you'll see it as inspiring as we have. Okay, Pat, that's all for me.
All right, thank you, Dominic. And we're just moving on here to ask if folks have any questions and answers. We'll provide answers if you can ask questions. I know that Polly had to leave. And so other members of the research team are present on the webinar if you want to learn a bit more about that Brock research that was done with older adult volunteers. And I'm sure that Pat is willing to answer any questions you may have about the survey results.
Also earlier, Mary, we heard about some words of wisdom that we know some of our participants have. So I see Mayor Junkin raising his finger there. So we're open to questions, answers, and comments.
All right, so if you want to unmute yourself with your question or comment, Mayor Junkin.
Yes, I have unmuted. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So a couple of comments, if I may. I believe the survey was done July 15th, 2021. Is that correct?
It was actually in 2022. So it was the survey period was from June 1st to July 15th, 2022.
Okay.
The research that Polly was referring to with the older adult volunteers on the municipal advisory committees, that work was done in 2021.
Okay, excellent. My comments were, I guess I thought that it was all done in 2021, which would be halfway through this this disaster known as COVID. And because in 2022, we had several elections. I know that here in Pelham, voter participation was down by 2,000 people. We had 7,000 in 2018. In 2022, we were down to 5,000 and something. Meaning, I guess, that the COVID brought what we find at the town level, and I'm also thinking also at the regional level, a huge. And I hope that's not, maybe that's too big a word, but people seem to be withdrawing from the volunteerism and spending more time either with themselves, with family, and we know this at the town level because at the beginning of new council, we have to fill committees. Whether it be seniors advisory committee, beautification committee, whatever. There's about 4 or 5, 6 of them, and we're for the first time we're having tremendous problems having volunteers come out to fill those committees for whatever that reason is, and I'm hearing that through all of the municipalities that we talk to, and even go back to the election itself. We had 3 people get acclaimed because we couldn't find people that wanted to get the commitment, make that commitment and be involved in the community as they used to be. So I think this COVID has indeed made changes at the personal level that we're just now starting to see as far as people continuing to reach out. Actually, obviously, this survey, a great survey. Anytime we as government leaders can get data, it's obviously a step in the right direction. And I'm looking forward to talking with with Vicki Van Ravensway, who is our Director of Recreation and Wellness. Just another thing, if I could comment on the transportation, that was a big move that we made in Niagara region, was consolidating the transportation, and the fact now that seniors can dial it up and for $3 can move within the municipalities. I think that was a huge, that's one of the things I've always considered the main advantage of transportation. It's a huge cost to a community, but it shows a community is a caring community and is a mature community when you do have a transportation system in place to look after the people that don't have the cars. That's basically all. I guess I was just questioning the survey and the timing of it, and through no fault of your own. I think this COVID has definitely maybe skewed the numbers somewhat, but I'm still looking forward to, it was a great webinar today. I appreciated all the facts and figures that you accumulated and threw at us. And I'm looking forward to going over it with some town staff to see, is there any other way we can improve our programs for the seniors? I know we make sure that whenever we have an event coming that we need volunteers for, we put pamphlets out at the at our community center. Seniors come out there to do the walking, for the exercising. They stop by the brochure counter. They can see exactly what's coming down the tubes as far as their programming, and yeah, it's a great. It's a thing that you have to do is make sure that the people are aware of the programs that are available to them and the opportunities for them to volunteer into the committee or into the community. So anyway, I definitely appreciate this webinar. I'm glad I was notified of it, and I look forward to discussing the results with town staff. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you for that. And I don't know if anyone else wants to comment. Pat, if you want to comment, that volunteering, it's widely acknowledged. There's lots of evidence to show that volunteering did take quite a hit during COVID, and it seems like things are rebounding and maybe not quite as quickly as we might like to see. Now, Teresa, did you have a question, or am I? Okay, go ahead, please. Teresa Murphy from Fort Erie.
Thank you. Just representing strong Fort Erie neighborhoods. I just wanted to say that I appreciated the comment that was speaking about the internet accessibility. And it's important that we remember in our region, just as Hamilton, I think was the example she was saying, in our region as well, it's very spotty. It's not, there's an equity issue here. There's people in our region who do not have access to it. So I'm hoping that in whatever ways possible, municipalities, region, whoever is kind of still digging into that issue so that we can get equal access across the region, so that it can connect not only our older adults, but everybody in general to be able to access social health, all these important things that they need to create strong and vibrant communities. So I just was hoping that, I know it's on the burner, I know it's probably considered a priority, but is it really? And how detailed are we getting at our local levels in our region to really dig into this problem and figure out a way to get equal access across the entire region? So that was all I wanted to say. I appreciated that comment from Hamilton. Thank you. Because in Fort Erie, it's spotty all over the place. Spotty all over the place. And it's just not fair to many people. Just wanted to say that.
Yes, that's an excellent comment. And it is something that has been an issue for a while. I understand it's being worked on, and probably for some people not quickly enough. So the more that we can raise the issue, I guess, in our local communities to remind our leaders that it's a priority. The other piece that goes along with that is digital literacy too, right? People's ability to utilize the internet to participate. So